So you're talking to me just one day afterwards, is that DIU is restructuring. And so NSIN, which was a separate entity, will now be integrated into DIU. So I'm just transitioning now to my new role, which is as the Deputy Director for Digital Platforms and the Developer Ecosystem.
Wow,
and this is something
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. And it's something I'm really, really passionate about, which is that, we leave so much innovation on the table out there in America, right? And I'm really proud to say that NSIN, that we have 37 representatives, spread out across the United States, bringing that innovation in, and they're working with universities every day, and they're working with the startups and in the innovation community, bringing in those technologies and bringing in the talent. And still it's so little, still we're only in half of the United States.
Welcome to GovCast, connecting with federal IT's top decision makers. I'm Alexander Bolova, production lead at GovCIO Media and Research. With me today is Editor-in-Chief Amy Kluber. Hi, Amy.
Hello, Alex.
So you had the opportunity to chat with Cheryl Ingstad, Deputy Director, Digital Platforms and Developer Ecosystem, Defense Innovation Unit. How'd it go?
It was great. Cheryl is an awesome person. She has such a cool background, and I'm excited to have her explain kind of her history and journey through technology.
Great. And speaking of that journey, I believe that Cheryl recently changed jobs. Is that correct?
Yes, actually. She was like 2 days into her new job when we interviewed. And
oh, wow.
Defense Department's doing some restructuring around like their innovation arms. So the Defense Innovation Unit basically got elevated. It's reporting directly to the Secretary. And within that, they absorbed NSIN, which is the National Security Innovation Network, where Cheryl was managing director. And so they're kind of going through a lot of change right now and rebranding, but the mission really is the same. So I'm really excited to dig into that.
And what was Cheryl's experience going into these roles?
She has kind of a nice split between defense and commercial.
I have both a kind of a nice mix of half commercial background and then half in the DOD, and even 1 year over at Department of Energy. So I was an Army reservist for 24 years. And in that capacity, I really went through many of the ranks. So I was a private all through, junior sergeant to senior sergeant or sergeant first class. So senior NCO. And then also I was commissioned as an officer. So I was also lieutenant and captain. And then I also had a civilian DOD career at Defense Intelligence Agency. So I was GS9 through GS14. And my background as a military officer is really intelligence officer and then signal officer. And then my last position at DIA, I was working in information operations, which is fascinating, by the way. And then I also had 15 years in the private sector. So I ran businesses and did business development in a Fortune 100 company. And that includes running a subsidiary overseas as a managing director. So I've run global business from the US, and then I've run international business from overseas. And then I think what's particularly pertinent to what we're doing at NSIN and in DIU is that I also ran a business that sold to the armed forces. So I know what it's like to have to deliver to the armed forces, to the high criteria that they have. And I've also experienced the bureaucracy aspect and all the highly complex contracts and how that's all managed. So that's so that half and half background I think is good coming into NSIN, which is an organization which is a DOD organization, right, that reports up through DIU, Defense Innovation Unit, to the Secretary of Defense. And so I've been able to see the innovation dilemma really from both sides. And that's like, well, how hard it is to run these complex government contracts and how hard it is to be on the outside in a private sector company, and to deal with the types of requirements that you might have, like say in a cost plus contract. Do you really have the accounting system? You almost need a team just to respond to all the contracting questions and do RFPs, and it's highly specialized knowledge. And these are things that, if you're a defense contractor, of course, by default, you have all that capability and you've invested in those resources. But if you're a commercial company, you don't have it usually. And then if you're a startup, you absolutely don't have that, and it's too costly to acquire. And then, that really skews a lot of these startups toward a commercial solution, even though they might have a dual use solution that would be great for the DOD. And they just kind of close it off and say, that's too hard for me. I don't have that expertise. That would be too expensive to gain that expertise.
So over these next few months, as NSIN is kind of getting integrated into DIU, going through a rebranding, she's going to focus on specific things in her new capacity that I'll let her talk about.
And so my job in the next few months is to just focus on what do we already have in the DOD, because there are numerous DOD organizations that are working in this space, and they do have a software platform that they use, and in a way, even AI that they apply to analyze the information and to connect to, their DOD scientists, or in a command or collaboration space also exists. And so my really task in the next few months is to evaluate all of those and also understand what the requirements are in DOD, coordinating everything among the community, working with the CDAO's office, and really come up with a plan whereby how do we prioritize and get the functionality out there that we need so that we can scale it, and that's really, really exciting.
So we can't go a single episode without talking about our favorite topic, artificial intelligence. How is AI impacting the defense space, according to Cheryl?
This is very interesting because she led a lot of programs where she was like bringing AI innovation into the agency, such as at the Energy Department, and in the defense space. She's taking what she experienced in both military and the commercial side to kind of bring that into defense now. So she'll talk about that. I know you mentioned AI. You do have quite a background in AI. That's kind of understating it. So you stood up the Energy's AI and Tech Office. And I know at 3M you led commercialization efforts in AI. So how has that kind of carried over into this new post in this defense ecosystem?
Gosh, what an experience to be in the private sector and really in a commercial company, after having really grown up in the DOD, because I enlisted when I was 17. Mm-hmm. And, all through college and everything, I was a reservist. And then right after college, I went into being a DOD civilian and being an intelligence officer overseas and back here in Washington. And so, I only knew DOD. And so to really learn business and what's important. So, and then that kind of leads to AI, how important it is that we collect all these data sets and that we also apply AI to have the insights that we can get from it, and also to improve our processes, whatever they are, the outcomes. And then the important that it's really ethically managed, explainable. And part of that is, and I don't hear this being talked about as much, how we have to monitor it routinely. So, you have a data set, it should be tested for security and everything at the beginning. And is that really the right data set, training data for this AI algorithm? That algorithm, by the way, so what's the provenance of the data set and all that? What's the provenance of this algorithm? And is it really, clean from any kind of, like, say, foreign intervention or compromise? Okay, we'll use that. But then what kind of drift will we have over time? And decide ahead of time, when are we going to check this again? Is it in 2 months? Is it in 1 year? And so that it doesn't drift over time and, it passed all the tests in the beginning. And then later we're getting horrible outcomes and we don't understand why, because, well, it was approved, So that's that having this monitoring system along the way is just really important. And then I would just emphasize, I did say security, but security, wrap all of these, wrap good cybersecurity around them to keep them secure.
Given Cheryl's innovative background, I know investing in new infrastructure and programs and such must be a priority. So how does Cheryl approach getting innovation in the door at DOD?
Yeah, it's a big beast, right? Like working for such a big department like DOD, there's a lot of bureaucracy. I mean, that's how government is set up. So she's trying to set it up in a way where it makes it easier to work with startups and kind of bring in that new way of thinking to the department. So she'll talk about that and how that looks like for NSIN and now DIU.
And so I think the way that we try to reach the innovation, pockets in America is, number one, by being physically placed there. So we have the regional network team, the 37 people spread out across, representatives spread out across the United States. And then we choose, cities where we put them to be near, tier 1 research universities, a really healthy, vibrant innovation ecosystem there. So a lot of, startups that they can interact with. And then some DOD presence, so they can also be walking in the doors of the base or the DOD lab there and say, hey, what are your problems? Because we are very problem centric. So, we don't send students on an internship without a problem to solve. We don't, of course, capstone projects, they have problems, but, all of our venture programs, which is, some people ask, what is venture for you? Well, it just companies, our startup companies, and particularly for us. But we don't do any of those accelerator programs unless it's problem centric. So at the end, they have to deliver a solution. So to us, problem centric, and then working on the early stage companies, and then working with talent, and then running high value programs. So we got the representatives co-located with these, in pockets of innovation across America and with the universities. And then we run high value programs, and those are the accelerators. We run challenges where students or companies can win a prize. And by the way, often the way we structure those challenges, they can check the box for having competed and then go straight on to an other transaction, direct contract without competing a second time. So that's a really important secondary benefit of winning a challenge. We have programs like Foundry and Forge where we actually turn it around. So instead of being faced directly out to the innovation community in America and to the universities, we're helping a DOD lab commercialize their technology. And so we're taking the technology that they have and aligning them with the startups, and then not just, okay, here it is, but it's something close to like a 6-month program that we put them through, helping them, okay, now you pick that technology. Now, how do you do a marketing plan? Now, well, do you have to produce this? Can you find a manufacturer? Are you going to do the manufacturing? On and like take them almost through how would you start a business to support this technology that you want to commercialize from the lab? And then the lab is really happy to get the technology, out of the lab and out into into America. So we do programs like that. And then, of course, the capstones at the universities, summer internships. And then also, I'm really happy to say that we have a partnership with DCTC, which is it's basically a civilian ROTC. And that civilian ROTC program that they're standing up in, it's with acquisition and sustainment in DOD. They're interested in our summer internship and the way that this is when you look at a civilian ROTC, well, what do they do in military ROTC? They always have a summer camp, right? And they send the cadets off to a base, and they get to do things that real soldiers, real officers do, and it's their first introduction to real military life, not just a class at the university. And that's actually what this summer internship is, but for civilians. So they get to work for the summer, the students get to work in a Defense Department lab. They get to work at a command. They get to work with a war fighter, and that's their first introduction. What would it be like to be a civilian working in national security, So yeah, and then we also have programs where, again, focused internally in DOD called boot camps. So we do several, about a handful of these per year. And that is where we help DOD organizations become more innovative. So teaching principles of innovation and how to solve a problem. And that is very transformative. I mean, and super popular. So yeah, this it's really a kind of a broad base of programs that we run, and also having the regional network team out there stationed across America. And I would say this, that when you get down to these programs, you'll find smaller numbers, right? I mean, when you consider what the demand might be in America, because we're a small organization, but in an accelerator at the end, we might have 10 or 12 in a cohort. We do have about a couple hundred, capstones across the country. Challenges might have 5 or 6 winners, and it depends on the challenge how many really participate. Summer internship, we have about 250 this year. So, but when you talk about larger numbers, well, then you look at our regional network team, the 37 individuals stationed across the country, and there what you see is daily, without any program, they are connecting people and companies into the DOD on just an everyday kind of basis. Like a company comes to them and says, "Hey, I have this. We're doing 3D printed buildings, and we sure would like to do one with the DOD." And then a simple introduction, like, "Okay, here, let me introduce you to the Army." The Army says, "Well, not ready for that yet." And then the company comes back to our guy. "Yeah, that didn't work." "Okay, well, let me introduce you to the Texas Military Department, like the National Guard." Suddenly, they get a contract with the Texas Military Department, and they're building 3D printed buildings there. Now that they have the prototype, they get SBIRs, the Small Business Innovation Research Grants. They two of those. And then guess who suddenly wants to do barracks on the Army base at Fort Bliss? The Army. So, but introduction to a number of different no program, but so that is like what I would call the daily bread and butter of our representatives. That is just happening constantly.
I am interested to learn more about this, the accelerators. I know you mentioned it a couple times. So the Propel Accelerator, a recent cohort partnered with SOCOM, for example. How does that process look like to bring in these companies, teach them how to work in the defense space, work with them on not just developing the technology at the end of the day? It's like just teaching them how to even work in a new environment. How do you determine how to fit in those startups and really make big impacts?
Oh, yeah. And by the way, this is one of our signature programs is Propel. So so first we have a mission partner, again, because we start with a problem. So they pick a topic. So for instance, recently we had Indo-PACOM, and they picked the topic of communication systems. So we get the mission partner on board and the topic identified, and then the application. So in that particular one, I think we had close to 250 applications, and we got down to, I think, 12 in the final cohort. But we run a number of propels, just, a few per year. We are also doing an Propel EDI, so Economic Development Initiative, which I'm really, really proud of, that we are having a few propels that are focused on this, which is they're targeting the economically challenged regions. And so what would be defined by the hub zones, the historically underutilized business zones. And we're partnering with the Air Force and their Spark cells as the mission partner. So that's kind of how we set it up. High value program, big part of our budget, and it's a 12-week course. And the companies that have come out of it have been quite successful. So in 2021 and 2022. These companies achieved afterwards 168 million of private capital and 50 million in DOD funding, which is pretty significant. I mean, a lot of these companies are anything from like two to four people. So they've really had success afterwards. And I can tell you the Indo-PACOM one just closed in May, and Indo-PACOM wants is trying to figure out how to get 4 of them on contract. So that's pretty, so you can see what the benefits are of working through a 12-week process that, again, trains them on like how to be a dual use company and how to market to the military, how to find what part of the military that your solution fits, and what kind of testing might you have to do considering the type of technology you have, what testing might be required, and then those introductions to the mission partner, who's really the sponsor and the mentor, right, of Propel. So that makes it easy, and it's really great because it's exposure for both sides. Like Indo-PACOM wouldn't normally get to meet these companies in the normal course of their business, because I mean the real process is they go to their contracting office, right, and they say, hey, find me this technology, and then back to our discussion about the contracting office may not be very exposed to these type of, pockets of innovation in America, and where to find these companies and who has what. And it's highly fragmented. So it's not a ding on them. It's very fragmented, So to have a cohort like this that is, offered up on the plate to Indo-PACOM, what I think it does is it really helps to accelerate the speed at which Indo-PACOM or any mission partner can pull these solutions in to the DOD. And it's just something that I've emphasized a lot when I talk to the CTOs or, chief science officers at various commands is, don't ignore early stage companies and think, I can't deal with a startup. I need something now, I'm talking about this year, I said, because it's really about speed, I mean, how fast can you mature a technology? And that's where, that can be very surprising. And while certain ones, maybe you can't mature them so quickly, there are others where it can be done. And if it's really needed, there are ways to do it. So, but they wouldn't otherwise have that exposure except through the Propel program. And so I just wanted to add also that we have Propel Boston open right now. Applications close August 1st. And and this is US SOCOM is the mission partner.
So it's one thing to have all of this procurement of innovative technologies, but it's another thing for it to actually be successful. So what does mission success look like when it comes more from this investment and exploration angle in terms of technology development?
Yeah, in the end, for defense, it's really about bridging that valley of death. I mean, we hear that a lot. In the context of DOD innovation, a lot of technology is brought in, but then it just dies. And this is something that DIU is trying to work to overcome. So she talks about this as far as what mission success looks like. She'll go into that and kind of discuss how a company moves through the process and how she's envisioning the future for that.
When you're talking at this early stage, we're talking about surviving the valley of death. So if you look at it in just a couple, 2-3 year period, it's about, did this company that has a dual use solution, did we help them to survive the valley of death? And usually that means getting some validation for their product, so some kind of probably testing, insight into what direction to develop it because it's so early stage. And then also the financing. So often, again, we're talking about, very, very small early stage companies. So how to get them the funding that they need. So is that a small business innovation research grant, and where we help, again, make those introductions for them. We don't actually issue SBIRs or anything like that. Introducing them to the right venture capital companies who would fund them. Other DOD, organizations that have R&D, not all R&D money is SBIRs, so there's other, R&D opportunities, and even more broadly in the U.S. government. So sometimes it's a connection to NASA, where they get funded. So surviving the valley of death, and then the other is to actually get on contract with DOD, providing that service or product that they have. So ultimately, that's why we want them to survive the valley of death, is so that they can get on contract and deliver a service or product to DOD. And that, and that is where the rubber meets the road, is did they finally, at the end, survive to deliver that service or product. So that's critical. And that's where the core of DIU has been, intensely focused, is how do we get that technology into DOD that the Defense Department cannot get through their regular partners right now.
For sure.
So, yeah, and so to do that, like I said, we have the regional network team spread out across America to engage with these companies and the talent. And then we have a data cell where we collect the data. That's how I can say, 2 years of Propel cohorts have achieved 168 million in private capital and 50 million in DOD contracts. That's how we know that. And then we have a transition cell that always is standing by to support companies that come into our network, whether it's through one of the regional network team members out there across the country, or whether it's through one of our programs. So let's say they were in, a Propel iteration 1 or 2 years ago, they can still come to our transition team and say, hey, I got this far, but now I need some help and need some advice, need some connections, whatever. And also, they'll do things like listen to the pitch of a company before they go to VCs. They do introductions to VCs. So again, help them continue to develop and survive the valley of death. And so I'm really happy to say we have, on the NatSec 100 from the Silicon Valley Defense Group, we have 5 NSIN companies out of the 100.
So what's next for Cheryl in the new setup with DIU? Anything stand out in particular?
I really liked what she discussed about NSIN. You'll hear it in her answer several times. Were it not for NSIN, this particular thing couldn't have happened. So she's definitely seen a lot of successes and use cases for some of these programs, working in the context of DOD. And what that means for the future is really exciting. So I'll let her describe that.
Well, yeah, so it has been such an honor to lead NSIN, and it has been a tremendous learning experience for me too, to get close to the talent in America and the amazing innovation that we have too, and how patriotic people are, and they really want to serve their country or provide this technology, even though sometimes it can be pretty daunting and challenging. And so I'm really, that has given me a lot of motivation as well, just to work with them. And I would say this: it comes down to one sentence as far as NSIN that I heard over and over again, whether I talk to students, whether I talk to early stage technology companies, and whether I talk to mission partners. I mean, I remember talking to officer at the PEO Program Executive Office, Stride, down when I was visiting Orlando, University of Central Florida. And he said this, like, were it not for NSIN, I would not have had this solution at such a low price so quickly. He said, I reached out to our regular, defense contractor and said, hey, I need this pyrotechnics delivery vehicle so that we can use it out in the field when we do, exercises. And they said, 2 or 3 years and a few $1 million. And he said, I gave it to your students on a capstone. I went to your NSIN, director here, and I gave it to the students. And in the first semester, for $1,000, they had a prototype for me, and then I, just continued it into the second semester with them, and now we've got a final prototype. And then they made it a program of record. So, a handful of students created an extremely low cost, solution for him that was, ready to go into a program of record. I mean, my goodness, sometimes it takes years to get a program of record, and so low cost and extremely quickly. And so I hear that over and over, that were it not for NSIN, this would have never happened. I would not have had this option. I wouldn't have gotten it so quickly. It would have cost 10 times more. This is amazing. And then I get to hear it from the students and from the small companies too. I would have never gotten that SBIR grant, or I would have never gotten that contract with, the Air Force or the Navy, were it not for NSIN that made the introduction for me, or that, gave me the opportunity to participate in a Propel or an Emerge program, or a challenge, like a Distributed Spectrum, a company I just met last week. They said, were it not for NSIN, I mean, we were just 2 students at the university, and we applied to this, challenge, and then the mission partner liked it so much, and that was enough support to then get them into a Propel. And then they went through the Propel, and two students, I mean, not a business, okay, learned then how to create their business. Now they are a business, and, just starting on their business journey, but the DOD really likes their solution. So, were it not for NSIN. And so that's how I feel about NSIN. And now, this will be a very important capability within DIU. And the beauty of it is that while we've been 2 separate organizations, one subordinate to the other, now being integrated in, we will have what I see NSIN is, the open funnel at the top of the innovation in America, and bringing that innovation in through our regional network, through the programs, and now through mission acceleration centers, the physical, open door offices that we'll set up across the country. And then you add on this new, what I'll be leading, that I'm so excited about, is, the digital on-ramp, and working with our partners across DOD to develop, something that is much more coordinated approach, so that we can bring on in volume and really scale it. And so I'm really excited about the future, and having this one organization as DIU, where you can bring in the top of funnel, and then it's just seamless. It works its way over to what was the core of DIU, which focused on commercial off the shelf and pre-commercial off the shelf too, doing, prototypes, but pretty much ready to go technology, right? Well, we will feed right into that in this, seamless way that when you're two different organizations and two different chains of command and everything, it's just slower. Not that it didn't happen, but it's not as easy as when you're one organization and totally integrated. So, and then it brings more resources to being inside of a larger organization. So we're very excited about this.
Thank you, Amy. That was a terrific conversation. A lot of enthusiasm. While I am very scared at the prospect of a valley of death, it seems like we are in great hands with Cheryl in charge. So before we wrap up our podcast, are there any last thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Yes. So she did mention the Propel Accelerator program that they are undergoing right now. This next one's in Boston, and they are looking for applications by August 8th, which is really exciting. So hopefully they're able to get some cool new partnerships through that. But I'm going to be looking forward to see what comes of it.
All right. Thank you so much. Listeners can tune in next week for a brand new GovCast. But until then, that's all for today's episode. If you like what you heard, make sure you leave a review and a 5-star rating on the podcast platform of your choice. I'm Alexander Bolova.
I'm Amy Kluber.
Thank you for listening. GovCast, along with HealthCast and Cybercast, is a production of GovCIO Media and Research. For more podcasts and to check out the other shows, head to govciomedia.com. Watch out for new episodes released every Tuesday and Wednesday across our shows. You can follow all of them on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you heard, make sure to let us know by leaving a review. And if you have any topics you think we should look into, contact us at newsletter@govcio.com.